Real estate is a phenomenal wealth amplifier. It's not the driver. It won't replace you. When I made my worst decisions in investing is I expected real estate to replace me as the driver. Hello, and welcome back to the Main Street Patriot podcast, episode 5. With me, as always, my producer, Jake. Jake, how you doing today?
Fantastic, Jimmy. It's really good to be here.
We're just cranking through these episodes. You told me once we got through the 5th episode, we can release the podcast. So
yep,
it's a big moment today.
Get excited, man. Get excited.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
We are going to talk about my favorite subject in what we do.
Okay.
By the end of this podcast, by the comments, by whatever people leave, I guess I'll justify if it really should be my favorite. But we're going to be talking about the passive income paradox.
Did you want to name your company that? Like, do you want to name your actual company that?
I want to name this podcast this.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So what you said you love paradoxes. Why is that? Like, what is it about paradoxes that gets you fired up? What is it about it's the way you live life. Like anything that's non-paradoxical, I don't think is really even worth pursuing. Like if you're going to go to Christianity and religion to find your life, you have to lose your life. And then I think people who are low verbal intelligence can't maintain two ideas at the same time. And it drives them nuts. Like the snarkiest 16-year-old is like, what do you mean lose your life and then you gain your life? That doesn't make any sense. Like I can't stand, let me say it this way. I can't stand non-paradoxical thinking. And then generally the greatest mysteries in life also generally start with a paradox. So that's also why it's interesting to me. Yeah. Yeah. That's super interesting.
Because everybody gets into real estate because they think they can quit their job. And they think, we go back to our Kiyosaki episode that once your passive income equals your expenses, you can quit your job. And it's not how it works. But there's this paradox that people come searching for passive income and they end up becoming more productive and getting a lot more active income. And then that active income allows them to get more passive income. But they think they get into real estate so they can stop and quit. The people who do it right end up becoming really more productive and better. They just become they're coming into real estate to be less productive and they end up being more productive. It's a complete paradox.
Yeah, I can totally understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you think you want to get into real estate so you can get passive income to quit your job. But to buy more real estate, generally, what do you have to do?
You need more income.
More
money,
active
capital.
Income. And to get more active income, what do you have to do?
You got to work more.
You have to either work more or become more efficient. Develop a new skill set, create more value. The time's irrelevant. Takes you 24, I love this. Steve Jobs had the same 24 hours that you and I did. He was just much more efficient with his and much more productive in whatever time he chose to spend working than we are.
Yeah.
And so
okay.
To get more, you need more assets. So you have to become more productive because you need more active income, right?
Right.
So then you get more active income and then you're able to buy another asset. And then you're like, whoa, now I'm getting a couple checks every month and I like this feeling and I want some more of that. So what do they have to do?
You got to make more cash
and have to become more productive.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, now you've done, like we're on the 5th or 6th or 7th time you've done this. It's like, so now the people who have gotten productive enough to buy 10 houses, and now they also have this new skill set of being able to invest in real estate.
Right.
And it's like, I've got 10 houses. I'm more productive. Why would I quit now?
Right.
Why wouldn't I just keep trying to become more active and more productive? Right. And then like people who work in our program, I absolutely love seeing this. So I had a
a good friend of mine, he was one of my first clients and started buying houses. And he thought he would get enough assets and he would, well, let me back up a step. Also selling these houses since like 2017, I'd have these highly successful, highly productive people with like, when you count up all the 4 pillars of appreciation, cash flow, leverages, and tax advantage, like they have a 400% return, like inside 5 years. It's the best investment they ever made. But their units aren't cash flowing, and so they're miserable. And I'm like, what's going on here? Why do they, and they don't need cash. They're like making a great income. And I'm like, but like you don't have a cash flow problem. You have a tax problem, and you have a leverage and and an inflation problem. I can't think inflation and appreciation are the same thing. But it's like you're highly productive. You're making a ton of money. You're doing great. Cash flow box for you is checked. But you have no long-term assets. So you have a target on your back from the IRS because you have no tax breaks. So you're not keeping everything you could be keeping. Real estate would solve that problem for you. Right. Also, you're not able to amplify your wealth because you don't have access to anybody else's money. I'll show you how to get the safest leverage out there. And then finally, they have no way to combat inflation because the stock market is, when you combine leverage with inflation, you always win. But to invest in the stock market, you can't use leverage. With a house, you use leverage. The house appreciates, but you only have a 20% down payment in. You get all that appreciation goes to you, and it amplifies your return. For example, if you buy a $100,000 house and you put a $20,000 down and the house goes up 5% in value, what's your return?
25%?
No. You only have 20 grand into the deal. So you just made 5 grand off 20. Your return's 25%.
Right.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
The bank, that's another subject when we get into the leverage episode, but like the bank is a sucker. Sure, they get their interest, but you get all the tenant pays the interest and you get all the appreciation over the long term. And all you had to do is put 20% down for it.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
And I'm just like, I had all these unhappy people who wanted to quit their job, even though they shouldn't be quitting their job. And then I had different clients who were becoming more productive and were like loving their returns. And they were loving that they had the skill set of being an investor now. And so this client of mine, Derek, he thought he'd buy assets and be able to retire from his job. But by buying 10 houses, you will develop a new skill set. You'll become more sophisticated. You know the term accredited investor?
Yeah.
There's also a sophisticated investor. Like from where he went from house 1, knowing what he knew, to at house 10, what he was able to mentally understand was unbelievable. So then he starts, what's that?
Yeah, just a growth.
So then he starts taking his returns from my investments and he starts investing in other things because he understands it now. This whole new world opened up to him. He gets up to 15 assets and he is able to do a cost seg study. And his wife at the time was working in pharmaceutical sales. They had 2 kids, and like she didn't hate her job, but she didn't love her job. And if she had a preference, she would have preferred to stay at home.
Sure.
So her income, which is like $200,000 a year, and his high income, her income was driving him into a higher tax bracket. They weren't keeping everything she earned. So he took his real estate portfolio, he did a cost seg study, and then advanced appreciation. And he was able, from just his tax savings, he was able to comfortably let her stop working on just tax savings. I was like, well, what about your cash flow? He's like, what do you mean cash flow? I don't care. I'm like, sure, I get $300 a house. But I'm like, I live in Houston. I have a high expenses. Like the cash flow is nice, but it doesn't move the needle for me. Now, the appreciation, the leverage, and the inflation hedge moves the needle for him. And then now here is the ultimate, and I experienced this myself. You know, going back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I experienced it myself too. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a Xerox salesman. He was horrible at it, but he got one rental property, and he's like, oh, I got to get better at selling to get another rental property. So he went from like worse to Xerox's greatest salesman ever, just because he was driven to get more active income so he could get more passive income. Same thing with me. When I was in medical sales, my main client was a 65-year-old surgeon, and he was like one of the biggest guys in towns, but there was no long-term play with him.
Okay.
And the guy was a complete, I'm trying not to curse on the podcast, but the guy was a complete asshole. And I think it was because I was an Army guy. The a-holes always loved me. They always because they could yell at me and I wouldn't care.
Right.
But this guy was a pain. And I was like, there's no long-term wealth being created by working with this guy. But, so here's what I did. All my commissions from this one client, I refused to spend. I put it all into down payments on real estate. I smile and I think about all the times and all the ridiculous things this guy did to me. And I'm like, he's still working for me. Because
Right.
all the money I earned from him are still in my houses. Am I painting the picture? Like, you want passive income, you become more active, you get some passive income, which drives you further to be more active.
Yeah. Spiral.
And so Derek got to this point with 15 houses. And then he called me and he's like, hey, Jimmy, I think, I want to do what you're doing, start my own business. And I'm like, why? And we kind of went through that. And he wanted something of his own, like equity.
Mm.
And, to work more than just a salary. And I'm like, cool, that's great. But do you really want to start over? Like, he was like the CEO of a big company. I'm like, you're crushing. Like, do you really want to start over just to call something your own? And I'm like, if I was sitting in your shoes, I would have a civilized, respectful discussion with the owner of your company and see if there's an opportunity for you to earn equity. At 15 houses, he could not have quit his job and not been fine. But he had new knowledge as an investor. He knew he could fend for himself in the investing world. He also just had more confidence. And the same thing had happened with me. Like I said, I quit too early. But having a little rental portfolio that you're not like, how can I ever earn another dollar? It gives you a certain amount of confidence.
Sure.
He was able to go in, talk to the owner of his company, and they created a plan where he earned equity. Now he has more active income, which he uses to buy assets, which give him more passive income, which give him tax advantages, appreciation, and cash flow. That to me just seems like a positive spiral, a positive feedback loop. And then those are the clients I love working with. That's why I love doing what I do.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it would work the opposite way, of course, in the reverse situation with negative feedback loop.
Yeah, if it was a negative feedback loop. So the people who were only happy if they got cash flow, like negative feedback loop, I'm like, dude, I can't do anything about this for the first 10 years.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like, you got to wait for time. And like, if you want cash flow, work. You want to build wealth, invest in assets. That's where I think Kiyosaki got it a little bit wrong.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
He was like, as soon as your passive income equals your assets, you're wealthy and you can quit your job. Where he should have said, if you want cash flow, work. If you want to build wealthy, and he does say that, if you want to be wealthy, buy assets.
Right.
He's like, the wealthy buy assets and the poor middle class buy liabilities.
Yeah. So you're saying, get the assets. If you have the cash machine, you got to work for that.
Passive income comes after hyperactive active income.
Right.
And so the other way I explain it to you ever seen Office Space?
Only clips of it. Yeah. Only clips.
There's something that happens when you don't care anymore.
Hmm.
And like, if you have 10 to 20 rentals, like, you're not hosed if you get fired. So you have a little bit of leverage.
Okay.
What happens in Office Space is this one guy, he just stops caring. And he starts telling people his opinions, and then these consultants come in. I mean, he's doing nothing. He's doing just enough not to get fired.
Right.
These consultants come in, and he's just freely giving his opinion and being honest because he knows he has a little bit of leverage because he doesn't care anymore.
Yeah.
That's what I think having 5 to 10 rentals do for people. So
security.
These consultants come in, and then they're like, and I think call the guy Dan. And the consultants are like, we love Dan. Like, real, he'll tell you what he thinks. Like, I recommend him for management. So that's the other thing that comes with the passive income is like, you stop white knuckling it, you stop pressing, and before you know it, you're getting promoted. So my program, that's who I like to work with. People who are trying to amplify their wealth through real estate, not people who are trying to beg, claw, and steal for real estate to make them wealthy. Like, real estate is a phenomenal wealth amplifier. It's not the driver. It won't replace you.
Right.
And when I made my worst decisions in investing and were in my worst mindset and least productive, is I expected real estate to replace me as the driver.
So how does one make that decision? Is it dependent on the market? Is it dependent on their specific career? Is it dependent on are there other factors that make a difference here? What would you say?
Depends on the person. Yeah. I mean, here's of the 4 pillars, here's what's certain. We have a fiat currency, so it's going to inflate.
Mm-hmm.
The only way you can really fight inflation, we'll do it on the inflation episode, borrowing other people. I'll jump ahead a little bit.
Okay.
The way you beat inflation, like, do you know anything about the Revolutionary War?
Sure. Yeah. I'm actually reading a biography of Washington right now.
Oh, have they talked about the continental currency yet?
Yeah. Yeah. It was crap.
Okay. So I love this country, but it's a country founded by real estate investors for real estate investors.
That's true.
We'll get into that in other episodes, but that is my fundamental belief. In Washington's biography, he only in real estate?
Oh, yeah. A ton of it. Yeah. Yeah. He was like just thirsty
Adams,
for it, buying up funds.
Jefferson, Hamilton, all had a bunch of real estate, right?
Mm-hmm.
They knew the game. I'm not saying they did anything nefarious here. I think what they did was smart. It created the greatest economy ever. They knew who they had to reward.
Yep.
So here's what they would do in the Revolutionary War. So we had to fight the greatest country, the greatest military at the time. And they never talk about this on the 4th of July. Yeah, the British Army, biggest military, biggest Navy at the time. And North America had no metal, had no gold and silver. So it was very hard. It was very hard to get currency. No one ever talks about how did they fight the war? How'd they pay for it?
Right.
How they feed the soldiers, how they buy the ammunition. All you hear is that Franklin negotiated with the French, and the French gave us arms, right? So what they did was they created a piece of paper that said, hey, this is money. That's called a fiat currency, not backed by anything. Usually back then, currency was backed by gold.
What was gold?
Gold or silver. This continental eventually became worthless because the Continental Congress did what good politicians do, and they take a fiat currency and they destroy it. They overprint.
Right.
So if you were smart back in the day, you would take a continental dollar, you would trade the continental dollar to title to real estate or land, knowing that that currency was going to zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the currency collapsed, but what did you still have?
So the land.
Right. Even right before the continental collapsed, if you bought it for $100,000, what was it worth now? Or 100 continentals, what was it probably worth?
200? I don't know.
500 continentals.
Sure.
And so in an inflationary economy, which we're in, I'm not going to say if it's right or wrong, it's bound to go up in value, especially hard assets.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now, if you take your cash and you don't put it into a hard asset and you just keep all your money in cash, what's it going to do?
Well, I guess it's going to lose value.
It's going to lose value.
Yeah.
Everybody's greatest, you gave me the confused look. Do you agree with that?
Well, can you just back up? Explain.
Let's just say we're in an inflationary environment right now where the government's telling us inflation's at 8%. If I take $100 and put it in a coffee can, what's it going to be worth next year? 92 cents. Now, if I put it into a house, what's that $100 going to be worth?
Okay, you're talking about
the purchasing value is that's called the nominal value. Yeah. Yeah, right. But if I take that same $100 and invest into a house with it, let's say I just pay cash for the house and that $100 is now worth 105 cents, right?
Right.
If I use a loan and only put $20 to buy this mythical $100 house, now my house is worth 105 and now I have $25 instead of 20.
Right.
Understanding inflation, understanding what's going on in the economy, it's almost certain that real estate will, over the long term, will raise in value. In the last 70 years, median home price in the United States has doubled every 20 years. That's to include the Great Recession. So what's inevitable is inflation. What's the inevitable consequence of inflation is appreciation of the asset.
Yeah. Okay.
Leverage. A 30-year fixed loan, the loan terms will never change. Your principal and interest is going to be the same forever, for 30 years. And so that's another fixed thing. And so what's a variable is the tenant, the resident, and how often they'll pay. But what's not variable is will the residents' rent go up or down in an inflationary environment?
It's going to go up.
Up. And then when they pay their rent, is your loan balance going to go up or down?
It's going to go down.
So here's the known constants. Rent will go up. The house will go up in value. The mortgage will get paid off by the tenant. And then the taxes,
Yeah.
it's black and white. You'll save this. We'd have to get out a spreadsheet and everything, but what you're going to save in taxes is determined by the day you buy the house. So 3 of the 4 pillars are constants. The only variable is cash flow.
Yeah.
How much maintenance is going to happen? How good is the resident going to be? How often will the resident move out?
Yeah.
That is controlled through property management and rehab. But what I can tell you is when 3 of the 4 pillars are controlled and you're looking for investment where there's constants, you got to invest in that. Yeah.
So do you find that the investors are they disciplined?
Do they lose their mind if one tenant moves out? Do they quit because they have a hot water heater go out? Like, the variables are the humans. Humans are we have a great, most property management companies have a great screening process. And then it comes down to the material of the house, and it's a long-term asset. So there will be repairs that are necessary. But those are the tenant and the maintenance are the only 2 variables.
Sure. So it depends on if they have the cash reserves in order to kind of weather a storm, so to speak.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. So it's like, do they have the ability? So I have a saying, cash flow comes to those who care least. So they have the ability, like whenever I have a big maintenance expense and I text my property management, Rhonda, like I'm sad. And she just texts me back, cash flow comes to those who care least.
Yeah. Nice. I like that.
And so, so I think what it comes down to is the individual investor.
So
to advise the clients on when enough is enough, or okay, stop, you've reached your goal.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, when you hit your target, but then I'll tell you from my own personal experience, whenever I hit a target, that lasts like 30 seconds. Like,
moving
and then a new one
goalposts.
comes. Yeah, and then the positive feedback loop continues. Like, we're recording this on January 3rd, January 14th, and then last night I go to my wife, I'm like, we had a great year last year. Like, it was an awesome year. And she just like, kind of like smirks at me. And she's like, you feel good? I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, this will last for like a day. Like,
Nice.
What are you going to come up with next? I wish I could answer. When does it stop?
So how do you decide when people are done? How do you?
I mean, when people are like, when do you want to retire? I don't see that day. The traditional answer is this: is you want $10,000 in retirement, you get 20 rentals, you own them for 10 years. At the 10-year point, you either start doing refis and start using that liquid cash, or you sell 10 and pay 10 off. And then you should be, at that point, get $15,000 a month in rent.
Okay.
And then you could essentially quit at that point. And then you probably then do really have some mailbox money.
Sure. All right. That's a good answer. I like that answer.
Yeah. Well, tell me what you think about this idea. So, we're wholesalers. Senior relocation is the main reason people call us. And so these people, great people, but their main savings account has been their house. And then we come and liquidate it for them with cash. So when I just had this thought, like, if these people who bought these houses probably in the 70s or 80s now, and now they're ready to retire and this is their savings account, if you could use somebody else's money to have 20 savings accounts, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, you're putting the money to work, and you got to put it to work.
And then most of the houses we buy, they're all completely paid off. And then if you were 30 years old right now, were to buy 30 rentals over the next 10 years, or 20 rentals over the next 10 years, 2 a year for 10 years, you would have all of those paid off by the time you're 70. And like, how are you not wealthy?
Right.
But are you going to lose your mind at a hot water heater going out and having 1 month of bad cash flow?
Yeah, it seems like again it just comes back to discipline, and that's what you guys help them with to withstand that.
Yeah.
Like almost like you have to caution them and coach them off the cliff, so to speak.
I mean, manage doesn't mean bad things happen. It won't happen. Manage means bad things are happening, and now we have the best, fastest solution possible.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You do your best to prevent, but like this is the real world. And
right. It's
things
only
happen.
natural that houses need maintenance, tenants move out, all that jazz.
Yeah. And remember, if you really want to get upset about something, get upset about having a fiat currency where all your buying power is getting washed away.
Take it up with Congress.
Don't get upset about the house that's going to double in value every 20 years and that you have to pay some maintenance.
Right. Right. So
Yeah.
I think at this point, I'm just curious, how do you get your investors to kind of trust this whole passive income paradox?
I mean, it takes, I think you got to spend some time in it to trust it, to believe
okay.
any paradox. You got to chew on it, think about it for a while and see if it really works. But yeah, it took me a little bit time to get used to it. It'll take some time to get used to.
Right. Okay.
And it comes back to the definition of investing. You know, investing is departing with capital and expecting a return in dividends or rents, and departing with the expectation of a long time horizon. Like I had a client who like owned a house for 90 days and they're like, it's not cash flow positive. I'm like, it's been 90 days. So I do tell people like your first year of real estate investing is like 9-year-old baseball.
What do you
I
mean
got
by
3
that?
boys. My last kid is 9. I got one more hot summer of watching the first year a kid pitch. Yeah, I mean, it's horrible. Like none of the kids can throw strikes. And then the kids who can throw strikes have hitters who are terrified of the ball. So every kid's either walking or striking out. The catchers can't throw anybody out. So then they're stealing 3 bases, then stealing home. You might as well just have them walk and then walk home. And you're just sitting there. And it's just your first year inside an asset's going to be like that. But then like my oldest son's 13. Now those games are starting to get very interesting. Why did I muscle through the 9-year-old baseball years? Is because 13 years pretty awesome. On the rentals I own, why did I muscle through the first 3 years? Because after year 3, things are pretty awesome.
Cool. Patience.
Yeah. And just knowing we had to get through this. One day they will not be afraid of the ball.
Well, you're really making an investment in your sons. You're making an investment in these people. It's just, it's all about the long game, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and then, you know, the people we work with, they get it. They're looking for something that's going to pay off in 10 years. And they're really concerned about inflation. They're concerned about their taxes and inflation. Now, that's the immediate benefits you can get from real estate.
Sure. And then eventually,
the cash flow gap will open up. So you think we hammered through do you think we should have named the podcast the passive income paradox?
I don't know. I mean, I really like it, but I want to hear what the listeners have to say. You know, what do they think?
I know.
They could put it in the comments.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So if you could, and you're listening to this podcast, put in the comments whether we should name it Main Street Patriot or Passive Income Paradox, or also be like, you know what, Jimmy, Passive Income Paradox, that's one of the dumbest things I ever heard, or Passive Income Paradox. I get it. I like it. If you had value in this podcast or you think somebody should know about the passive income paradox, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're interested in getting started, why don't you hop on a call with my team? Go to jimmyvreeland.com and hop on a call with one of my team members and see if my team's a great fit for you to start or continue building your real estate portfolio.
Yeah. Don't forget about the Facebook group. We got an awesome Facebook group for people trying to get wealthy on Main Street.
It is available and it's free. People love free things.
See you next time.
Sweet. So if you like what you heard today and you want to learn more, sign up for a discovery call with one of the Vreeland Capital success coaches at jimmyvreeland.com.